I really encourage women and want to educate them to protect themselves financially when you enter into a marriage. I personally feel it's no different than any other contract that you would write in your life because you are dealing with another person. Some people feel differently about that. I've had conversations with many that say, well, if I sign a prenup, isn't that just setting ourselves up for we're going to get divorced?
What do you wish that you had known before you got divorced that you know now?
One of the truest statements someone had said to me is, you truly don't know the person that you married until you divorce them. I'd hear stories and I'd be like, no, I can't see at the time, my husband doing that. When you are married and you're in that wonderful relationship that it stands right now in that moment, that is the best time to decide your fate. Because otherwise, think about it, you might as well go to the neighbor right now and just say, here, take our kids and you tell us what we should do with them. Because that's what a judge is.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness. And the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Dion Payne, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm your host, Dion Payne, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Kathy Ferris. Let me tell you a little bit about Kathy. Now, Kathy is a divorced woman with 4 children who helps women to find clarity in whether they should go or stay in their marriage. She helps them navigate a more loving and peaceful life ahead. And she does that through helping them to have pre and postnuptial agreements. Kathy is also the host of a podcast called KATapulting Confidence. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Dion, for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Likewise. I'm very excited. Now, your bio is really intriguing. I'm really curious as to what your experience was that led you to this point.
Yes, it is definitely, everyone has a story to tell, and it is a huge part of my life. I am a mother to 4 children. I was a teacher, first grade teacher, for just a short time before I started having children. And then I knew I'd want to stay home with them. And my ex, obviously we were in agreement to that. So I was home for quite a while with 4 children. And then really, to make it the story short, then I got a divorce after 21 years of marriage. The divorce had started probably at like year 17, but it did take quite a few years just because of the court system, because of my ex not turning things in, not handing things in, and then COVID. So it took definitely a long time to get to the final divorce end date. But leading up until that time, as I said, I was an educator. I had worked always educating, coaching people. I was a fitness instructor, kind of doing that part-time throughout my life. And then that led me into life coaching. So you can say that education, coaching is definitely in my blood. But my divorce, like most women's stories, ends very, uh, there's so much hatred and animosity and so much emotion, especially when the woman decides to leave the marriage. Um, I find that men want to retaliate, especially because we still live in a world where men are the financial breadwinners and women are still the typical nurturers that stay home with the children. And I really encourage women and want to educate them to protect themselves financially when you enter into a marriage. I personally feel it's no different than any other contract that you would write in your life because you are dealing with another person. Therefore, you can never choose how that person's going to react, the choices that they're going to make. So it really is a contract. And I know some people feel differently about that. I've worked with people, I've had conversations with many that say, well, if I sign a prenup, isn't that just kind of setting me up for, well, if we're kind of setting ourselves up for we're going to get divorced because we're putting this document here. But you do the same thing when you're going for a job interview and you get the job and you write a contract. I mean, you hope you don't get fired, but it may happen. I mean, we all know there's life and death, but you do the same thing with life insurance. I mean, we know it's going to happen. We don't know it's going to happen tomorrow, or we don't know when it's going to happen at all, but there's a contract for everything. And in a world where it's 2025 and it's still heavily male dominated, women need to start protecting themselves and really understanding finances and being very literate and educating themselves in the financial verbiage and terms out there in the world.
Absolutely. I've got lots of questions for you, Kathy, but the first question is, what do you wish that you had known before you got divorced that you know now?
That's a great question. I do wish somebody had said to me, although I don't know, maybe if, you listen when you're married, and you think everything is, peachy and roses, but one of the truest statements someone had said to me is, you truly don't know the person that you married until you divorce them. And it just kind of puts things in perspective, like, whoa, you think somebody's going to act one way. I truly thought my ex would. I'd hear stories and I'd be like, oh no, I can't see at the time, my husband doing that. No, he wouldn't do that. So if there's one thing I could say is, money doesn't buy happiness. It truly doesn't buy happiness. It makes life easier. Yes, it does. It makes it easier because you're not as stressed out. You can pay your bills. And that's ultimately it. We're paying bills, paying your mortgage, paying for your children if you have them. But so in order to guarantee yourself a life where you're not just thrown to the curb, you have to know what money you have coming in, what money you have coming out, what assets you have, how much do you own of something? If they're involved in a business, do you own the same percentage as someone else? There could be many different people playing, in that part. Credit cards. Do you have credit cards? Do you have credit card debt? All of those things I kind of knew. I mean, I did a lot of the finances, but I really didn't know everything that we had. I didn't realize how having shared credit cards, that I was never the credit card holder. I was just a primary an account user. So my husband held the account and I was an authorized user. So he had all the rights to everything. So once we started, going through the divorce process, I couldn't even call and get a balance. So if there's, rewards within that credit card, he could cash them out, and he owned that credit card. So, I mean, that's just one little, example, but just not being educated about your finances and everything that you own or don't, your debt as well. I'm wholeheartedly, it's my journey, my purpose to help women start navigating financial independence.
Thank you for that. The word that comes to me when you speak to that is transparency. So when there's transparency in a relationship across the whole financial landscape, then that's one aspect of financial independence, because you know exactly what's going on and you can make allowances for that. So, you know, you might, I don't know, but it's just, I feel that transparency is something that's really important. It also reminds me of a saying, and it kind of ties into what you were talking about with prenuptial agreements. Nobody ever really wants to do them right at the beginning, but the saying that it reminds me of is pray to Allah, but tie up your camel. So, you know, you're hoping for the best, but you're preparing for the worst. And I think that's really important as well. So could you just talk a little bit about the prenuptial and postnuptial agreements and what they consist of? And how somebody listening could start thinking about this and getting themselves in a position where they might want to take this on.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important. I feel that before you get married, a prenup is just getting the nuptials written before you get married. So, and that can look however you want it to look. You know, it's two people coming together before they get married and saying, okay, is everything that I had before the marriage going to be mine if we divorce? So what I'm putting in, I'm taking out. Or is it, you know, what we put in, we can then share 50-50 if you're putting it towards assets. I mean, that you get to choose. That's the great thing is you get to choose. My heart hits with the women that are married because I know that when being a divorced woman, there's some people that feel like, oh, she's got to be yay for divorce. And I'm really not. I think relationships are so wonderful and can be wonderful. It's unfortunate that so many women that I work with or that are still married that were, you know, women that I met through my children, they aren't happy, but they don't leave. And there's many reasons why they don't leave. But one is money. That's one of the top contenders. Especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, because you've given up your identity. It's something that, you know, obviously both partners have agreed on and said, yes, this is going to work within our family unit. But I've never met, me personally, a woman that said, my ex treated me so good during the divorce. He knew how hard I worked, even though I didn't bring actual, you know, money into the home. He set me up. He got me my house. I'm good for a few years till I get back out there and, you know, get a job. I've never heard that. I don't know about you, but until that starts happening, we do have to protect ourselves. So the postnuptial means you've already gotten married. Here we are. Write the postnuptial agreement while you are married. While you are married, it's the best because you both are still in a very loving state. There's love there. You're not going through the bitter emotions of the divorce, of, you know, who divorced, or if there is, you know, if someone cheated or not, then you forget it. It's a complete mess. And you are leaving everything up to a judge and lawyers that don't know anything about you. You know your children the best. And I put children there because that's my story. I have them. And so many other women do as well. But don't you think the husband and the wife should decide what's best for the child rather than someone who truly, truly doesn't know you at all? And you know, it's the world of politics. We don't, you know, a judge could like women or not like women, and vice versa, like men or not like men. So why leave it up to that person? So I've created this workbook for couples to go through who are married, and it goes through very common questions. And then I've added many that I felt were, they were unforeseen. They weren't in the little generic workbooks or the typical questions that you might ask or might, you know, bring to a lawyer's attention to write in a postnuptial agreement or a prenup as well. And so I've added those in there, and it goes through everything from, again, home, timeshares, if you own that, Airbnbs now, vehicles, dogs, animals. If you have, animals, they're expensive too. You might get it, but okay, can you afford that? Can you afford if the dog, needs surgery or just food and medications? Going through, again, children, there's so many things that they need as they get older. If they need a vehicle at 16, who's going to pay for the insurance, the car, the registration, the servicing of it? All of those things are in the workbook, which just would make life so much easier. So that way it's already there. Everything is spelled out. So if you do go down the road of divorce, you can at least feel confident that you are going to be supported in a way that you don't have to move out of your home. And if you do have to move out, you will have another place to live and to call home, and that there'll be X amount of dollars allocated for your living expenses. Whereas in a divorce, many times it's like, this is what, we hear it. It's my story. We were making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And now to this date, somehow I'm getting $220 a week for 4 children. So how did that happen? So it is so, so important that what you have, as I said, of cash coming in, because if you're a stay-at-home mom like I was, you have to reinvent yourself. And now, we were speaking about it before, but with technology, you're outdated within, 6 months or a year. So if you've been a stay-at-home mom for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're going to have to go back to school. You're going to have to take some type of certification or training program, maybe go into a whole new career path. And how are you going to be able to do that when you still have to pay for rent or a mortgage? And, I think it's just more than ever, I feel like I'm in the right space at the right time, because the way the world is, with everything being so expensive, it's not just, interest rates are high or oil's high. It's like everything across the board. We're living in a time where, I don't feel like we've ever seen it before. And so if you're, coming out of divorce and you have nothing, and you're limited to $50 a week, that's nothing, right? So it's really getting women to know their financial portfolio and understand different terms, ask questions, and have it written and documented and signed and sealed, that it says, yes, this is legit. This is, a legal document. And these are the things that you will take along with you if you get a divorce.
Yeah, that's really cool. And another thing that occurred to me when you were talking was that I read a study. It was quite a few years ago, and I was in the thick of mothering then. So my kids are 15 and 11. So I feel like I'm not over, but I'm sort of on the sort of the other side. But I do remember it was at the time that I was a stay-at-home mum as well, and what I read was, if women got paid for the work that they actually did and the overtime that they actually did in the home to look after the children, they would be on a salary of $200,000 a year. Now, that was Australian money. So, let's say $300,000 in US money. And it makes sense, because if you had to outsource all of the tasks that women do during the day to look after the children and keep the home, then it makes sense to me that would be the sum. So I think the difficulty is that society doesn't value the work that we do in the home and raising children. We therefore don't get paid for it. So in terms of superannuation or pensions or retirement accounts in the US, that break that we have is not compensated for. So that's another area where women are financially vulnerable. And it's a really sad situation. And of course, what you were saying in terms of when emotions are running high, when the love is gone and divorce is happening, then that can really bring out some of the cruelest elements of humans on both sides. So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Get a structure in place beforehand. talk about, have that transparency in terms of, okay, well, we've got this is what I want to walk away with at the end of, if we get to the end of our relationship, or, this is how we're going to split the assets when we get to the end of our relationship. And then just, do the work to be able to stay in that relationship and stay coupled. But I think I actually was talking to a financial columnist the other day, and she said that couples that go to financial planners, what financial planners find is that they don't have as many couples divorce, because the biggest thing that leads to divorce is money, and they've already sorted out their money. And it's not to say that, that they've got lots of money, but it's just that they're really clear about their values in their relationship, what they want to spend their money on, and they develop a plan to be able to do that. And so when we don't have that, external wisdom or that structure in place, that's where I think problems do happen.
100%. I agree. I feel that so many times, like when you said it's planning, we go through, when you do anything, if it's even buying a house, you're a young couple, you're buying a house, you plan, you're communicating about that purchase. If it's a car, if it's even getting married, right? You're talking about, well, do you want kids? Do you know? So we do all of this planning, quote unquote, and talking, but yet we don't really write it down. Or when people feel like, oh, this is a bad thing, we're setting ourselves up to divorce by writing these prenups, but you're not. You're talking with a successful couple that communicates, because communication is key. It's everything. Being able to talk about what your needs are in a relationship and then into a marriage. It's just really making it a legal document, because you're talking about, hey, we have kids. Yes, I'm thinking I want to stay home. That's great. My mom stayed home. I would love that. That's the way it should be. So why not just write that stuff down, right? And, oh, if we have a car and this, and you have a car, okay, if we want to get another one, or a boat, oh, who would get the boat? Like, because you're in that loving environment, and that is, you're willing to share, you're willing to compromise. I mean, that's the best thing, right? When you have, a half of something, how are you going to split that? You're going to do it. The best time, again, is when you can actually sit down, talk about it, communicate. And when you're going through a divorce, once one person says, I want out, you're not going to have the communication anymore.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Something sort of popped into my head, and I love to do visioning processes and things like that. So, I can see it in my mind. It's like, okay, this is what I want to happen. And then I remember learning at a seminar or somewhere that when you're doing visioning, it's really good to write it down. So I'm just seeing how you could combine the two things. As a couple, you could be, creating your vision for the future and saying, this is what we want to happen. And then also just putting some structure behind that in terms of the financials. Like, okay, so what does that look like? And how do we keep this transparent? And, what happens when we decide that we want to change our cars and all of that sort of thing. So it seems a little bit daunting. One of the questions I was going to ask you was, for somebody that's listening to this and they say, oh, this is a really good idea, how would they broach that with their partner? But one way of broaching it would be as an overall visioning process of like, this is what we want for our relationship. And then let's document the whys and wherefores afterwards.
Absolutely. And, it's again, just being transparent and saying, to your loved one, hey, I've heard this story and this story way too many times, and I want to make sure that we're both in a good place, because I love you and I know you love me. I want to know that we're both okay, and that we're both doing it now while each other's best interests are on the table. And we don't have to do it, all in one night. We can say, all right, this is going to be done over the course of 3 months, and you just dabble it on a Sunday. Maybe it's a date night, and you just, go over a few different pages. Doesn't have to be this daunting, because it very much can be paperwork and documents, but, break it up into smaller pieces like you would anything, rather than just looking at that finish line. Take every mile slow until you get to the finish line.
And I loved what you said about, keeping it fair for both parties as well, because whenever there is a separation or divorce, both sides do end up losing in some way. So it's really about, protecting both parties. And I think that's an important point to bring out. Again, tie up your camel, pray to Allah and all of that. But just looking at the whole situation and going, it's not going to be easy for either of us if we decide to separate. So then how do we make sure that, we could do it in the best way, so that the kids get taken care of, first and foremost, and that we can actually make that work for ourselves as well.
Yes, because, children, they are going through such a hardship. They're losing, it's not, they're getting two different families. The family unit is just looking different, right? But of course, it's a huge transformation for everybody involved. And when you put that emotional stress, and I know I was under such stress, especially because I didn't have the finances because he was the breadwinner. You're having somebody that they look up to, their parents who, days I just wanted to stay in bed and not even parent at all. And who would want that? If you're in a loving state in that moment, again, as you're filling this out, as I said, if you're envisioning your children, it's like, I don't want that for them. I'd want them to know that, divorce is hard enough, but hey, when you go to mommy's, you're good. And when you come to daddy's, you're good. As I said, I just think everything is done. It's best to have it done, like anything in life. And when your heart is full and you're in that loving environment, that loving stage of the relationship.
I really agree with that. And yeah, I think that's really important to talk about. These kinds of, it's a difficult conversation to be having, but when you can talk about it from a place of love, it's way more empowering.
No, it's just that one of the examples that I was going to say is for myself staying at home. I relied on a husband for everything. Then if I'm staying home, so obviously money, but health insurance. If I was going to buy a vehicle, right? Because I'm not working. So he had to be like a co-signer, all of those things. But healthcare is so important. And I was completely cut off. The court system didn't make him say, hey, you have to pay for her health insurance for 3 years or X amount of years. However, whatever they felt is fair. And I think if I were to go through all the things that I felt weren't fair, because I'm not looking to be that person that's, suck them dry, and that you hear that all the time. I am fairness. Like, no, whatever we came in with, we should both be leaving with. It should just be fair. And I want men to know I'm really a supporter of, for women and a life coach, but with men that if they hear my story or they're listening, it's just know that I'm the woman that's fighting for you as well for fairness. It's not about, trying to take him for everything that he's worth, or that, because again, look at where it gets you, nowhere. You're just miserable and angry, and that's no way to live life. And again, you're putting it, I know I do focus so much on the children because that again is my story. But even if you didn't have children, everyone wants to live in peace. We want to wake up. We want to feel that our heart's not fluttering because we're nervous. It's that, where am I going to get my next meal? How am I going to pay for this? We just want to wake up and know that today's going to be a good day. I feel peace in my mind, good in my heart, in my belly. That's what we're all aiming for. So, to be able to have both parties come together again, I can't say it enough, but when you are married and you're in that wonderful relationship that it stands right now in that moment, that is the best time to decide your fate. Because otherwise, think about it. You might as well go to the neighbor right now and just say, here, take our kids and you tell us what we should do with them. Because that's what a judge is.
That's not a pretty thought.
Mm-hmm. It really isn't. You could go to anyone. You could just go to your neighbor. You could go right to the grocery store and say, hey, who are you? Okay, here. decide my fate, decide for my husband, our kids. Tell us what you think. And that's what you are getting. You want people to be fair and just, but we don't live in that world.
Yeah. So what I see from what you've shared today is that to be a fully financially empowered woman, it's really important to be having this conversation, to be planning ahead, so that, so to get that fair outcome for everyone.
Yes, that is definitely what I am speaking of today. And I'd like to add in as well, because I know it's so much about, postnuptial and prenups and getting that all squared away. But now I have two boys, 2 girls. And I say to my girls who are 19 and 23, unfortunately, you will not stay home. I'm a very easygoing mom. I let them have their journey, but I'm like, you are going to be doing something that always keeps you relevant, that keeps you in the workforce, that keep reinventing yourself, and you always have a means of income. And I think that's so important that we hone in onto the younger women and the younger generations. I'll keep preaching it, but I know like anything else, we can't touch all of them. Only a few might hear, because I'm sure girls, we're still put in society. It's the Disney princesses and the fairy tales. And, that's really still how little girls grow up. So if I can make that change, and not even a change, just say, hey, be your own person, be independent, even if you're working part-time, just always stay active. In that way you can, again, make your own money, which leads into being able to build your credit, which then having credit helps you obtain assets.
Awesome. Now, Kathy, thank you so much for everything that you've shared. This has been a really important podcast episode today. I'd just love to know, for anybody that wants to get a hold of your workbook or to connect with you for your life coaching, how could they do that?
Yes, they can connect with me on my website, KathyFerris.com. You can also listen to my podcast and reach out that way, KATapulting Confidence. I am on Instagram at Kathy Ferris Coaching. So you can always message me that way, but the easiest way is probably also either through Instagram or my website.
Fantastic. And I will have all of those links in the show notes for this episode as well. Kathy, it's been a real pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for your time and really important information to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Zian. I had such a great time chatting with you, and thank you for having me on.